All right, so let's get into Dan MacRae. I think this is, first of all, who is Dan MacRae? He's only 37 for the record. I remember watching him with the Riptide. I unfortunately did not dabble in the NLL before COVID. But Dan MacRae was once a 6th overall pick for the Calgary Roughnecks. He actually went to 2 championships, winning it in 2019. That was the Del Bianco year. Played 178 games between Calgary and then I think the last 3 or 4 with the Riptide, probably 3. I remember watching with the Riptide, but it is interesting. Apparently, he stayed with the staff and worked his way up in a way. He had 178 games, like I said, 850 loose balls. Talk about a vacuum, my boy. Credit to you, sir. 197 caused turnovers, 29 goals, 90 assists. Not bad, man. Not bad at all for Mr. MacRae. I will say, though, on August the 14th, he was announced as the new general manager and head coach of the Ottawa Black Bears, a.k.a. the Fighting Jeff Teats. Not to say, I didn't report Dan MacRae. The team did, as far as I know. But I will say this. I speculated last season that, and really the season, I think I put Dan Ladouceur on the hot seat to start the season. And for the record, Dan Ladouceur, for those of you that don't know my history, he was one of the first ever NLL interviews I did. And it was not on Daily Dive. It might have been, but it was like I did Callum Crawford, maybe Jake Fox, maybe Andy Towers, and I think Ladouceur was right there along that same timeline. He was awesome. The fact he came on my show and I was not even Daily Dive at that point, thank you, sir. But it looked like, he was on the way out. And I don't know what he does now. Shout out to Ladouceur. However, there needs to be a new voice. And we're doing the coach GM thing. Good stuff. I do wonder what kind of culture Dan MacRae will set with Ottawa. Now, I could be wrong. It feels like Dan Ladouceur's coaching style would have been a defensive kind of thing. And obviously last year in Ladouceur's defense, get it? That was actually not even, that pun wasn't even intended. But in Ladouceur's defense here, Callum Jones missed a good part of the year. And I know, like we talk about Owen Grant, rightfully so. Guys, Callum Jones is right there as one of the best young defenders. And not just the best, one of the meanest young defenders in the National Lacrosse League. There were times, I think a year or two, I think 2 years ago, where I was like saying on the air, this guy didn't care if you were Dane Smith or, I want to take shots at this guy, that's fun, or Justin Morgan. This guy was laying it out. Do you realize the cojones you have to do that? I was impressed. Callum Jones, as a rookie, was laying out star players. He's awesome. That being said, he's just one guy. I do think the Ottawa Black Bears, I'm curious to see the culture MacRae wants to build. I would assume it's defensively still, but maybe a little bit of transition. Pat, I'll get to your hot take soon. But I would assume MacRae wants to open up the Jeff Teat a little bit more. And it's a scary thing to think about. Because as I see that out loud, I was like, wow, this guy had 56 goals last year. And I think like a low in assists is like his rookie year, according to Pat when he came on the show last week. But yeah, I found it very awesome that Jeff Teat is still like, we haven't even seen the peak Jeff Teat maybe. You add in Rob Hellier, love that, because I was on this show begging for a guy to kind of balance the situation, and maybe it will. But guys, I'm just interested to see what this guy builds, and I want to see how quickly the Black Bears buy in. Full disclosure, I'll do this now. I'll end with Pat's comment. I feel like it's more optimistic. I'm trying to think of a way to word this without giving away my predictions. I think Ottawa will be fighting for a playoff spot once again. I'll say that. Much like last year when they were right there and kind of missed it, I think they'll be in a similar predicament this year. Maybe I'll change my mind over what the outcome is, good or bad, but I do think Ottawa will be right around the 500-ish mark because I think you have to. I think next year, like, they could be awesome, but I'm just not bought in, which kind of gives away my cards there, but it is what it is. Pat Gregoire says, hot take. Maybe not. Callum Jones will be the 2026 Defensive Player of the Year. Listen, I'm not mad at that at all. I think if Ottawa succeeds in a big way this year, I do think that Callum Jones will contribute heavily. Last year alone, he had 68 loose balls, 14 caused turnovers, and if you want to do like caused turnover block shots combined, it was 17 in just 9 games. I do think that matters to their defense. We'll have to see. But again, the question for me is, what does Dan MacRae want to do? You can keep on packing it with Callum Jones, but according to the roster moves this season, they brought in Rob Hellier, which is offense. I did not see much else they did roster-wise. I don't know. Remember, that's all I talked about, Dan MacRae and Rob Hellier, which is why I said next year they could be a force, but this year, that's the big thing. Okay, Dan MacRae not only has one of the best minds for the game, he's an outstanding player, coach that helped build the mint. Oh, okay. Pat's got another comment coming. The Burlington Blaze. Interesting. Pat Gregoire's comments continued. Dan MacRae might not turn Ottawa around right away, but he will help the team become a contender. Being the GM and head coach is a difficult task at the NLL level, but Pat believes he can have success at both positions. That's intriguing. I like that. I like that take. Like I said, like Dan MacRae, the fact that he ended his career with the Riptide after so many years in Calgary makes me very curious to know how much he's bought into this franchise. It seems like, obviously he's bought in, but like, I am curious, like what he was doing, like to work behind the scenes. I love it though. I love it.